This is the Beginners JavaScript course you are looking for. My name is Bo Carnes and I'm with freecodecamp.org. In this full JavaScript course, you will learn everything you need to know to get started with JavaScript. This course is perfect for beginners or anyone that just wants a refresher on basic JavaScript syntax. This course actually goes along with the freecodecamp.org JavaScript curriculum. So if you want some live coding challenges to go along with every part of this course, you can check the link in the description to that curriculum. But this is a completely standalone video, so you don't need to go through freecodecamp.org, but it could be helpful. Also, after this course, you're going to want to complete some or build some JavaScript projects. So I have a link in the description to some project tutorials, but then after that, you're going to want to create some projects on your own. That's how you really learn JavaScript. You have to create things without even going through a tutorial and just use a search engine to find the things that you don't know or need to learn. To go along with the Free Code Camp curriculum, I have all the ES6 stuff in the second part of this course. And that's pretty much it. Let's learn some JavaScript. So how exactly do you install JavaScript? Well, for the most part, you don't. Actually, all web browsers can run JavaScript, which is great because a lot of devices have web browsers on them. So when you write something with JavaScript, it will run on all sorts of devices and operating systems. So you have a few options for writing JavaScript. Let me show you a few things you can do to follow along with this course. You could download a code editor. Here I have Sublime Text. You could also use Visual Studio Code or Atom or any code editor. And I've created an HTML file because HTML files can be opened in web browsers. And I have these script tags. These are HTML tags, but within our script tags we have our JavaScript. So if I open up this file in a web browser, it looks like this. Well, I can open up my JavaScript console, and then in the console you can see it says Hello World. That's right from my JavaScript program. So whenever you do console.log, it's going to show on the console here. You could also just use the code editor that's included on freecodecamp.org. Like I mentioned, this course follows along with the JavaScript curriculum on freecodecamp.org. And there's a built-in JavaScript editor right in here, and then it shows you the console down here. Another option would be to use CodePen. If you go to codepin.io, I'm going to go to Create Pin, and then there's going to be three windows, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Well, we just care about the JavaScript, and in this course, we're not going to be doing anything with HTML and CSS. We just need the JavaScript and the JavaScript console. So if I do console.log and then do Hello World, then we can see right in the console, Hello World. The final thing you could do would be use Scrimba. Most of the course I actually recorded using Scrimba.com. So if you want, you can use Scrimba.com to follow along. Once you log in, just click the plus button and do JavaScript, Playground, and then confirm, and it's going to open up a new JavaScript window. Now I can increase the font size here, and it already has console.log hello from JavaScript, and you can see in the console right here, hello from JavaScript. Also, if you hit reload, it reloads everything, and you'll see this pop-up, hello from JavaScript. So that's something interesting about Scrimba, is that it has two ways of logging in the console. We have the pop-up, and then we have the console here. You'll see that in this course too, the two different ways of logging to the console. The first thing we'll talk about in JavaScript is comments. Comments are lines of code that JavaScript will intentionally ignore. They don't do anything. They're just used to create notes for yourself and others about what the code does. So if you do // you can make an inline comment. An inline comment means it's at the end of a line of code. For instance, I can put var number equals 5. That's a way to declare a variable, and we'll talk more about that later. But right now we're just talking about comments. You can see that this code is in color because the code editor knows that that's code that's going to run, and the comment is automatically grayed out because it's not going to run. We can also do an inline comment, or a multi-line comment. If we do a slash star, and I can put this is a, and then I can put multi-line comment, and I'm going to end with a star slash. So it begins with a slash star and ends with a star slash. And you can put as much text as you want in between these, and you can see this is all grayed out because it's all a comment. And then afterwards, I can put number equals, number equals 9, and you can see it will be in color again because it's no longer commented out. Now we're going to talk about data types and variables. In computer science, data is anything that is meaningful to the computer. And JavaScript provides 7 different data types that you can use within JavaScript. Now, some of the more obvious and most common are strings and numbers. A string is just any sort of text. A number is a number. Now let's go from the top. So undefined is something that hasn't been defined. You may have a variable that you haven't set to be anything yet. Null means nothing. So you've set it to be something, and that thing is nothing. So you can say this is null or nothing. A Boolean means true or false. We talked about string. A symbol is an immutable primitive value that is unique. Now we'll talk more about those later. Number is a number, and an object can store a lot of different key value pairs. Again, we'll talk more about those later. Now, you are often going to set data into a variable. A variable allows computers to store and manipulate data in a dynamic fashion. It's basically a label to point to the data. A variable is almost like a box, and you can fill it with anything. You'll fill it with the data that you want. So, to declare a variable, one way is to use the var keyword. Var stands for variable, and I can say my name. I can set this to anything. It can be any of the data types above, but it's common to set something to a string. So I can set my name to be Bo. Now, later, you can set it to be something else. I can say my name equals 8. And you can just set it to other data types later. Now, there are actually 3 ways to declare a variable in JavaScript. So var is one of them, and for a while that was the only way, but there are other ways too. There's a way called let, so I can say let our name, and then I can say equals free code camp, and then the other thing would be const. So I could do const pi equals and 3.14. Now, the difference between var, let, and const, var is going to be able to be used throughout your whole program. Let will only be used within the scope of where you declare that. Now, we're going to be talking about let and const more later, so I'm just giving you a brief overview of what they are now. Const is a variable that should never change. It can never change. So, like right up here, I declared my name, but then we changed it here. So it started out to be Bo, and we changed it to 8. A const, you can never change it. If you do try to change it, you'll get an error. Okay, that's all for now, but like I said, we'll be talking more about the different types of variables later. There's a difference between declaring variables and assigning variables. Here's how you assign a variable, var a and then the semicolon. I didn't mention this earlier, but you end all lines in JavaScript with a semicolon. Well, it's not actually required. You can actually just skip the semicolons completely, but most people recommend that you put a semicolon just so it's obvious where the end of the line is. So here we are just declaring a variable to be called a. And then here we are assigning a variable. We're declaring and assigning in one line. So we're declaring it var b, and then the equal sign is the assignment operator. It means that 2 is being assigned to b. We're not checking if b equals 2 though, we're just assigning 2 to b. So after that, we can actually assign other things. So I can say a equals 7. So now I've just assigned 7 to a. I didn't have to declare a because it was already declared. And I can also say that b equals a. So I've now assigned the contents of a to b. I'll put the semicolon there. One thing I want to tell you about is console.log. Console.log allows you to see things in the console. So I'm going to console.log a. And if I load this here, you can see down here in the console, it shows 7. So right now we've assigned a to be 7, and so when we console.log a, it shows 7 down there. If we put another console.log right here, this will allow us to show what a was up here and then down there. So console.log. Now if I run that, we can now see at first a was null, and then now it's 7. So here it's null, and it's 7 down here. So you can check what variables are at various points in your program. Now I'll show you another example of initializing a variable to an initial value at the same time it's declared. So I'm going to say var a equals 9. So the var a is declaring it, and the equals 9 is initializing it with the assignment operator, which is the equal sign. Before we do anything to these variables, they are uninitialized. That means their value is undefined. We have not set them to anything. But it's simple to fix that. I'll just set this to 5. I'll set B to 10. And then we can set C to a string. It's going to be I am a string. We always have to put in quotation marks like that. So you can see a plus 1 is going to equal 6. 5 plus 1 equals 6. B equals B plus 5. That's going to be 15. And then C is now going to say, I am a string. Variable names and function names in JavaScript are case sensitive. That means the capitalization matters. So this declaration here is not the same as this assignment. Even though the letters are the same, the capitalization is not the same. So it's not going to assign correctly. And in here, you'll see there's an error if we try to run it because this has not been defined. It has not been declared. It's generally common practice to use camel case. So let me show you how we do that. Instead of studly cap var, it's going to be studly cap var. So the first letter is always going to be lowercase, and anytime you have a new word or a new section of a word, you just capitalize the first letter. And so we can change this. This one's correct. So now we just go down here, studly cap var, and then we just do proper camel case, and then title case over. So now all these should be defined. So we declare them up here, we assign them right here, and then this is not going to give us any errors. It's going to behave exactly how we want it to behave. Adding two numbers in JavaScript is pretty straightforward. You just use the plus operator. So this says 10 plus 0, which equals 10. We can also do 10 plus 10, which is going to equal 20. If we do a console.log, and I can put sum here, and then you'll be able to see that the answer is 20. Right in the console, 10 plus 10 is 20. And subtraction is also what you would expect. We have the subtraction sign here. This says 45 minus 0. We can also do 45 minus 33. and then that would equal 12. So the difference variable equals 12 now. Multiplication in JavaScript uses this asterisk or star symbol here. So this says 8 times 0, which is 0. Or we can change it to 8 times 10, which is 80. So now the product variable equals 80. You can divide in JavaScript with this slash symbol. So this says 66 divided by 0. We can change this to 33. So now 66 divided by 33 is 2. Quotient equals 2. To increment a number means to add 1 to it. So here we're incrementing my var by 1. So it starts at 87. 87 plus 1 is 88. There is a quicker way to increment a number. Instead of doing this, we can just do myvar plus plus. Myvar plus plus. Now we have incremented myvar from 87 to 88. We learned about incrementing a number with plus plus. You can also decrement a number with minus minus. That means subtracting 1. So right now, my var is going to equal 10. 11 minus 1 equals 10. We can do the same thing with the minus minus operator. So now, my var still equals 10. We can also create decimal numbers with JavaScript. These are sometimes referred to as floating point numbers or floats. You can see this is one here, 5.7. It can be anything. I'm going to make one called my decimal, and then I'm going to store it as 0.009. Anything that has a decimal point in it is a decimal point number. Multiplying decimal point or floating point numbers is the same as multiplying integers. So we have 2.0 times 0.0. If I just change this to 2.5, now the answer to the product is going to be 5. And I can console.log that so you can see. If I just put product, and if we do the browser here, you'll see that the answer is 5. You can also divide decimal point numbers. So in this case, I'm going to change this to 4.4. So now the answer to quotient is 2.2. Quotient equals 2.2. The remainder operator looks like a percent sign, and it gives the remainder of the division of two numbers. So for instance, if I want to find out the remainder of 11 divided by 3, I can do remainder equals 11, and then I'm going to put the percent sign, which is the remainder operator, 3. And 11 divided by 3 is 9. 11 minus 9 is 2. So the remainder is going to be 2. 11 remainder 3 is 2. The remainder operator is often used to determine if a number is even or odd. If you can divide a number by 2 and the remainder is 0, that means the number is even. It's common to want to add a number to a variable like this. See, a equals a plus 12. Well, a starts at 3 plus 12 is 15. So we're just adding 12 to whatever a is. Here we're adding 9 to whatever b is. Here we're adding 7 to whatever c is. This is such a common pattern that there's a shortcut to do the same thing. It's the plus equals operator. So instead of a equals a plus 12, we can do a plus equals 12. So this equals the same thing. So instead of b equals 9 plus b, we can do b plus equals 9. So now we're adding the value to the variable and assigning the answer to that variable. So again here, we can do plus equal 7. So that's just a shortcut. Previously, we learned about plus equals. Well, minus equals does the same thing, but subtracting. So this says a equals a minus 6. We started at 11. Minus 6 is going to be 5. So the new a is going to be 5. But we can shorten that. Instead of a equals a minus 6, we can do minus equals. This is just a shortcut that JavaScript has that means the same thing. That means a equals a minus 6, but it's just shortened. Same here, so we can do minus equals 15. C equals C minus 1. We can do C minus equals 1. So it just subtracts the number from the original value and then assigns that new value to the variable. Here we have a equals a times 5. Well, we can do the same thing as before. We can shorten this to a times equals 5. So that means the same thing. Here, we can do a times equals 3. And then c equals c times 10. We can shorten this to c times equal 10. And that's another shortcut for JavaScript. And there's also divide equal. So a equals a divided by 12. We can do a divided by equal 12. And then here we can just do divided by equal 4 or divided by equal 11. So another way of just dividing the variable by a new number and assigning that answer to the variable. We've already mentioned strings a little bit, but anytime you have some characters surrounded by quotation marks, they can either be single quotation marks, double quotation marks, or backticks. It's a string. These are called string literals, and you can create them just like you see above. I'm going to do a few more. So var my first name equals Bo, and var my last name equals Carnes. So that's how you create a string in JavaScript. Sometimes your string contains the quote symbol. Now normally the quotes identify the beginning and the ending of the string. But what if you have something like this? I am a double quoted string inside double quotes. So I'm actually trying to use these quotes right inside the string, but the JavaScript doesn't know what to do about it. It thinks that this is the whole string. When it sees the first quote inside the string, it thinks we're at the end of the string. So there's something called an escape character. So if you want to escape a quote, that means it will no longer be considered the end of the string. I'm going to put a backslash. So if I put a backslash before each of these quotation marks, JavaScript no longer interprets it as being the last character in the string. So now you can see this is a full string. And then if I log this out, console.log, and I put my string, you'll see that it's not going to show the quotation marks. So, I mean, it's not going to show the backslashes. It shows the quotation marks without the backslashes because when we put backslash quotation mark, JavaScript knows that this should just mean a quotation mark. We talked about escaping a quote character like this, where you put a backslash before the quote character, so JavaScript knows that this is supposed to be a literal quote character inside the string. However, you're not going to have to escape quote characters very often because there are other methods of accomplishing the same thing of having a quote character within a string. So a common way is to use, instead of having your string start with double quotes, have it start with a single quote. So a string can either be surrounded by single quotes or double quotes. So this time we're just going to have single quotes. And now I can remove all of these escape characters from inside the string here. Okay, so now you can see that JavaScript still knows that knows that this is a string, even though it has these double quotes inside. An additional thing you could do is use backticks. So if I put a backticks before at the beginning and the end of the string, now I actually can use single quotes and double quotes both within the string. But right now I'm just going to focus on showing you the double quotes or the single quotes with the double quotes inside. We talked about escaping a double quote character by using the backslash before the double quote. There's actually quite a few other things you can escape out. You can escape out a single quote character. You can escape out a backslash. In fact, anytime you're going to use a backslash, you're going to have to put 2 backslashes so the JavaScript knows that you're not trying to escape a character. You can also add a new line character, or a carriage return, a tab, a backspace, or a form feed, all with doing a slash and the corresponding letter here. So let me show you an example. I'm going to put var myString equals, and we're going to make a multi-line string. So we're going to have the first line, and now I'm going to put backslash n to add a second line, and then I'm going to put a tab, so backslash t for the tab, and backslash backslash to add a backslash. Now it's going to say second line. Now I'll do backslash, and then I'll just say third line. And if I were able to log out all of that, you would see 3 different lines, and you would see the tab and then the backslash character. You can concatenate strings with the plus operator. You can see here that we have 2 strings, I come first and I come second. They've been added together or concatenated with this, so the our string is now one long string that says I come first, I come second. I'll give you another example here. So we can say my string equals, this is the start, and then I'm going to put a space before the in quotation mark, because when these get concatenated together, we want there to be a space between these 2 sentences. And I'll say this is the end. Now let's just see what that looks like. I'll do a console.log and do a myString, and let's see if I run this. We can see this is the start, this is the end. Just one long string. You can also concatenate strings using the plus equal operator. You can see here in this example, we have the R string equals I come first, and then we have the R string plus equals I come second. So remember, just like when you're using numbers, plus equals means that you take whatever is on the end here and add it to the variable. So we just added I come second onto the end of I come first. Let's do another example down here. My string equals, this is the first sentence, and then I'll put a space at the end because we're going to do my string, and I'll do the plus equals. This is the second sentence. Now, if I just do a console.log here of my string, we should see that those sentences have gone together. This is the first sentence. This is the second sentence. Good. You can concatenate strings together with variables. You can see here our name, FreeCodeCamp. Hello, our name is, and then we add this variable, the our name variable, which is FreeCodeCamp. Hello, our name is FreeCodeCamp. How are you? Well, we're going to do the same thing down here. So I'm going to do my name equals Bo, and then my string is going to equal my name is, and then I'm going to add the variable name, which is my name. And then I'll continue the string here. Whoops, that's supposed to be a plus here. and I am well. Um, See that I put a space here and here because you have to make sure you put appropriate spaces in. And let's see what that looks like. I'll do a console.log, and I'll just put my string here. If I show that, my name is Bo and I am well. Looks good. You can append variables to strings with this plus equals operator. You can see we have this variable, an adjective, which is set to the word awesome. And then we have another variable, free cocamp is. And then we have the our string variable plus equal an adjective. So now our string is going to equal free cocamp is awesome. So let me show you another example. We're going to say some adjective equals worthwhile. And now I'm going to use the plus equal, so my str plus equals, and then I can put some adjective. So now, after we do the my string plus equals some adjective, my string is going to say learning to code is worthwhile. Sometimes you want to find the length of a string. JavaScript makes this easy. So we have the first name is set to Ada, but we just use the .length property to find the length. So first name .length. Remember, first name is Ada here, and then .length will return an integer, a number that has the number of characters in the string. So that will be 3. So let's try this again. Here's another example. Last name length equals last name. We just have to type in .length. And just to show you, let me console.log that. And you'll be able to see if I put in last name length. And if I run that, you'll see 8. Because there are 8 characters in the word Lovelace. Bracket notation is a way to get a character at a specific index within a string. So you can see right here we have the first name, Ada, and right here we have first name, and then here's the bracket notation. You can see there's brackets with a number inside. So most modern programming languages, like JavaScript, don't start counting at 1 like humans do. They start at 0, which is called zero-based indexing. So with the number 0, that refers to the first index of the string, which would be the A. So the A would be 0, D is 1, and then A is 2. So this first letter of first name, if we do first name with the bracket notation with a 0, that's going to equal A. So let me show you another example. Let's say we want to get the first letter of the last name. Again, I'm just going to do the bracket notation and put a 0 here. If I wanted the second letter, the O, I would put a 1 here. So if I console.log, we can see what it came up with. So console.log, first letter of last name, and if we look in the console, L, because the first letter of the last name is L. Strings are immutable, meaning they cannot be altered once created. This does not mean that they cannot be changed, just that the individual characters of a string literal cannot be changed. So look at this example. My string, and then we're going to use bracket notation to choose the first letter. So it currently says Jello World. We want the first letter to change to an H to say Hello World. But if I run that, there's going to be an error because of the immutability of strings. Now we can still change this to Hello World, but we can't just change an individual letter like that. So we're going to have to do my string equals, and I'm just going to have to type in the whole thing, which is Hello World. And now it will change to the word Hello World. You can use bracket notation to get any character position in a string. So earlier we did the first position, but here's how you would get the second position. Remember the 0 index, so 1 is the second position, 0 is the first position. We can also get the third letter of the last name, using the brackets, we'll just put 2 in the brackets to get the third letter of the last name. You can also use bracket notation to find the last letter in a string, even if you don't know how many letters are in the string. You do it based on the length. So if you look right here, in the brackets, we have an expression to be evaluated. First name dot length minus 1. So the length is 3. 3 minus 1 is 2. The reason why we're doing a minus 1 is because, remember, we count starting at 0. So the length minus 1 is going to be the last index of the name. So we can do that same thing here. To get the last letter of the last name, I can just do last name dot length minus 1. And that's going to get the last letter of the last name, which is the E right here. We saw how to use bracket notation to get the last letter of a string. You can also do the third to last letter or fourth to last letter. So you just subtract however much you want from the length of the string. So we have the bracket notation first name dot length minus 3. That's going to get the third to last letter. So if we want the second to last letter into this variable here, we do something similar. We just do last name dot length, and then we're going to subtract 2 to get the second to last character of the string. We are going to use our knowledge of strings to build a Mad Libs style word game. In a Mad Lib game, you are provided sentences with some missing words, like nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, and then you fill in the missing pieces with words of your choice to make a sentence that could be funny and hopefully makes a little bit of sense. So let me show you how you do this. This also uses a function. Now, we haven't talked about functions yet. I'm going to explain those more later, but for now, just go with it, because that's not the point of this lesson for now. But this function, called word blanks, you can call the function, and you have to pass in certain types of words. You pass in a noun, an adjective, a verb, and an adverb. So down here, you can see that we're calling the function called word blanks. That's the function name here, and we're passing in a noun, an adjective, a verb, and an adverb. So the point is that we are going to use all these words that are passed in to make a sentence. So we know that var result equals an empty string at first, and then we have to use all these words in result, and then the result is going to be returned from this function, and eventually will be logged out onto the screen with this console.log. So what I'm going to do here is do result plus equals. We're going to use the plus equals to add something to this result using all the noun, the adjective, the verb, and the adverb. So let's see, it's going to say the, and then we'll use the adjective, my adjective. In this case will be the big, and then let's put the noun, my noun, because adjectives are words that describe nouns, the big dog, and then we're going to say what this noun is doing, the verb, my verb. The big dog ran, and then where does he run to? To the store, and then we're going to add, we need a space here, so there's a space between this to the store, and then we're going to add the final adverb. So now we have to add a period, and there's one more thing we have to add, or a few more things. So right now, it's my adjective, my noun, my verb, and there's no spaces in between those. So if I run that, you can see what that's going to look like in the console. It just said, big dog ran, with no spaces. So we're going to have to add some spaces in here also. Let's do that. And now it's going to take in the noun, adjective, verb, and adverb and then put it into that sentence. So one cool thing is we can actually pass in some different words. So like for instance, if I copy this, I'm going to paste it. Instead of dog, I will put for the noun bike, and then adjective, I'll put slow. And then for the verb, I'll put flew. And the adverb, I'll put slowly. And now, if we look in the console, we have two sentences. The big dog ran to the store quickly. The slow bike flew to the store slowly. Arrays allow you to store several pieces of data in one place. So look at this example, our array. Now arrays always start with a bracket and then end with a bracket to show the beginning and ending of the array. And every element in the array is separated by a comma. So you can see here, the first element is a string, the second element is a number. And you can have more and more elements. You just put comma and you can keep adding elements. And the elements can be any data type. You can see here we have a string and a number, but you can also use arrays or floating numbers or really any sort of other data type in your array. So let's see another example. So let's do my array Quincy, and then for a number we'll do 1 because Quincy is number 1. When one of the elements in an array is another array, that's called a nested array or a multi-dimensional array. You can see here's the beginning of the array and here's the end of the array, but the first element in this array is another array with 2 elements of its own. Same with here, the second element is an array. So this is 2 arrays within another array. So we can do that here. Here's another example. So our first element in the array will be an array with a string and a number. And then I'll put a comma to put the second element of the array, which will be another array with a string and a number. Earlier we learned how to use bracket notation to find a specific index in a string. You can do the same thing with arrays. So look at this array. Our array, we have 3 elements, 50, 60, 70. And these have the indexes 0, 1, 2. So with this R array, with the bracket notation in the 0, that's going to be index 1, which is going to equal 50. So we can do the same thing here. My array equals 50, 60, 70. So let's try to find the first element in that array. So var r my data equals my array, and then I'm going to do index 0. You could do index 1, index 2, and then if we console.log that, we can see for sure what that is. So if I put my data, and we can see in the console, it's 50. You can use array indexes to modify arrays. Now we tried to do this earlier with strings using bracket notation, and we were not able to modify a string using bracket notation, but with arrays you can. So the original array is 18, 64, 99, and then we're going to use the array index of 1. Now 1 is going to be the second number, or 0, 1, 2, and this number 64 is going to be set to 45. So the new array is going to be 18, 45, 99. Let's try it again with this, 18, 64, 99. So let's do my array, and then instead of doing the second digit, I'm going to do the first digit in the array, the first index, which would be index 0, and I will say equals 45. So now this array has been updated. So if I do console.log and then do my array, we'll see that the array is now 45, 64, 99. You can also use bracket notation to select an element in a multidimensional or array of arrays. So you can see this array here, we have our outer array, but inside that array are more arrays. The elements of the array are other arrays, and the last element of the array actually has an array in this. So this is a 3-layer deep array right here. So to access an array of arrays or an element within an array that's within an array, you use a double bracket notation. So if you see this example here, my array, the first bracket is 0. That's going to get the first element in the array, which would be right here. And then that element is an array. So the second bracket would be the index of the array within the array. So this 0 would point to here. So let's try to figure out how we can select a value equal to 8. Well, let's see. I see an 8 right here. So let's figure out what this first number should be. Well, let's count. 0, 1, 2. So the third array would be index 2. Now we want to go 0, 1. Now we have to do index 1 to get the second number in the third array. So let's test to see if that equals 8. So I'll do console.log and then do my data here. And we'll see if that equals 8. It does. We did it. You can append data to the end of an array with the push function. So see, an array has been set up here, our array, Stimson J cat, and then we take our array right here and use the push function to push into the next element in the array another array here. So now it's going to look like this. We can see at the end of the original array, we've pushed this other array at the end. So let's try it again down here. We have my array, and you can see we have each element in the array is another array. So I'm going to do my array.push, and then I can push something on the end here, which will be like above another array. So this is going to say dog, 3, and now we've pushed this onto the array. We can remove an item from an array with the pop function here. So see this pop here? And then we know it's a function because of the parentheses at the end of the word pop. So the array starts with 1, 2, 3. So now we do this array.pop, and it's going to it's going to remove the last element, which is the 3, and then it's going to put it right into this variable here. So now, as you can see down here, remove from our array now equals 3. And then our array is going to equal 1, 2, because the 3 has been popped off. So we can do the same thing here. So remove from my array equals, and I'm going to do my array.pop. And we can see what the array is going to equal now if I just do console.log my array. And if you do this, we can see that the array only has the one item, the one array, instead of the 2 arrays. The shift function is very similar to the pop function, except it removes the first element of the array instead of the final element. So we see the shift function on the end of the array here, and the array is the same as before, but now the first element, Stimson, is being removed. After we shift off the first element, the array is going to equal jcat, and the removed from our array is going to equal Stimson. So let's do another example down here. We're going to do a shift again. So I'm going to do equals my array.shift. And now the my array is just going to equal dog 3. And the remove from my array is going to equal John 23. The unshift function is similar to the push array function. While push adds an element to the end of the array, unshift adds an element to the beginning of the array. So let's look through this example code. We have the array, Stimson jcat. We're going to shift off the first element, remove the first element. So our array is jcat. Now we're going to unshift, or add an element at the beginning, which is the string happy. So the array will now be happy J cat. So let's try again. This time the array is John 23, dog 3. Because of the shift, we've shifted off the John 23. And now I'm going to unshift something. So I'll do my array dot unshift. Now we're going to add something to the beginning of the array. We'll do Paul 35. So now the array is just going to be Paul 35, dog 3. Let me give you another example of nested arrays. This will be a shopping list. So inside this array, we're going to have another array, and we're going to have items. Cereal, how many boxes? 3 boxes. We also need some milk. Let's get 2 cartons of milk. Let's get some bananas. 3 bunches of 3 bananas. We'll also get some juice. 2 containers of juice. And finally, we will get some eggs. We'll get 12 eggs. And now we've created an array of arrays, which is our shopping list. Functions allow us to create reusable code in JavaScript. This is how a function is set up. We have the word function, then we have the function name. There's always parentheses here, and you can pass information into the parentheses. We'll talk about that later. And then we have these curly brackets. So this is the opening curly bracket, and then we have the closing curly bracket. And everything inside the curly bracket is run anytime the function is called or invoked. So here the function is being called by just putting the function name with parentheses after the name. So every time this function is called just like this, the console is going to say, "Hey world." So if we load the console right now, you can see it says, "Hey world." And if I just copy this and paste it a few times, we'll see that it's going to say, "Hey world, hey world, hey world" in the console. Since we have run the function 3 times, we see the words "Hey world" 3 times. So now I'm going to create my own function that's going to be very similar. So I'll do function reusable function. And this time it's going to say something slightly different. It's going to say "Hi world" instead of "Hey world." And now I can call the function down here just like this, reusable function. Oh, forgot to put the parentheses, that's important. Now you see "Hey world" and "Hi world" in the console. Parameters are variables that act as placeholders for the values that are to be input to a function when it is called. So we have defined a function right here called our function with args, and inside the parentheses we see the letters A and B. Now these can be any name. We call these anything, not just A and B. They could really be any words up here, and that means that when this function is called, we're going to pass data into the function or input data into the function. So you can see the example here where we're calling the function, and instead of saying A and B in the parentheses, we're actually passing the values 10 and 5. So when the function runs, it can use the information that's passed into the function. So in this case, it says console.log A minus B. Well, that's going to be 10 minus 5 because the numbers 10 and 5 have been passed into the function, and that's going to output 5. So I'm going to create a function that's very similar to that function. This one is going to be called function with args, and it's also going to accept an A and B, but we could call it anything we want. And inside, instead of subtracting A minus B, we're going to do A plus B. Now, I'm just going to call this function with args, and I'll pass in 10 and 5, and let's see what that looks like in the console. So first, it outputted 5 for this one, then it outputted 10 for this one. Scope refers to the visibility of variables. Variables which are defined outside of a function block have global scope. Global scope means they can be seen everywhere in your JavaScript code. For instance, I'm going to declare a variable right here called myGlobal. I'll set it to 10. Now, since this is set outside of a function, we can see it anywhere in the whole code, even in this function right here called fun2. We can see that we reference it here, and we're going to be able to see it. Now, this is an if statement, which we will talk more about later, but we're checking if the type of myGlobal does not equal undefined. So it will not equal undefined if it has been defined and the program knows about the variable. Since this is global scope, it does not equal undefined. It equals 10. The program knows about the variable because this is in global scope. So since this function can access the myGlobal variable, we'll run what's in this if statement, where we just add to this output variable myGlobal, and then we put with the value of myGlobal, which is 10. Now here's another example where we're going to see if the type of oops global equals undefined. Well, we're going to set that here. So it is possible to set a variable without using the var keyword. So I'm going to set this to oops global equals 5. So you can see here that there is no var keyword. So normally, if you do use a var keyword, since this is within a function, it will be scoped to that function. If we had the var keyword here, this would be scoped to this function, so you would not be able to see it in this function. However, since we forgot to put the var keyword in this example, there's no var keyword, it becomes global automatically. That means you can access it anywhere else in the program, including here. So if we put the var keyword, then oops global would equal undefined, and then we would never have this line in the output. However, since we did not put the var keyword, oops global equals 5, and this will be added to the output. Oops global and then the colon 5. So when we console.log the output, it's going to say myGlobal 10, oops global 5. Now, actually it's not going to say that because this is in Scrimba, and in Scrimba it's more careful and just enforces the fact that you have to use a var keyword. But if we were in our browser, it would not enforce the var keyword, and then it would actually show myGlobal 10, oops global 5. If this was a little complicated, don't worry about that, because a lot of these concepts we'll be going over again later with additional examples. Variables which are declared within a function, as well as the function parameters, have local scope. That means they're only visible from within the function. Let me show you what I mean. if I declare a variable right here, my var equals 5, so we've declared this variable inside a function. So this variable, my var, is only visible inside the function. So it says console.log my var, it should console.log the 5. So we're going to call the function here, and it's going to console.log my var, but then the program is going to run this console.log that's outside of the function. It's still going to try to access my var. And so let's see what happens. You can see in the console that first there's a 5 because it console.log within the function. Then there's an error because it tried to access my var outside of the function. So really we just need to delete this where we try to access the variable outside the function. And now there is no error. It is possible to have both local and global variables with the same name. When you do this, the local variable takes precedence over the global variable. Let me show you an example. Here we have a function called myOutfit that's going to return outerwear. That's this variable up here. This is a global variable because it is declared outside of the function. So when we console.log the output of the myOutfit function, or the myOutfit function is going to return outerwear, which is the word t-shirt. So let's check the console, and you can see, yep, t-shirt is there. However, let's change this up a bit. So we have some space here, because I'm going to put var outerwear equals sweater. So now, if I run this program, you can see in the console, it's going to say sweater instead of t-shirt. It's because this local variable, outerwear, took precedence over the global variable. Another interesting thing about this, if I do console.log, and I console.log the outerwear variable, we'll see that it's still t-shirt. So first, you see in the console it says sweater and t-shirt. So first we console.log this function, which is sweater, it returns sweater, and then we console.log the global variable, which is t-shirt. You can return a value from a function with this return statement. So we have this function here, and we are passing a number into it, the num, and then it's going to return whatever's after the return keyword, in this case num minus 7. So here we're going to console.log the function, and it returns the result of minus 7 is this 10 minus 7, which is 3. So it's going to console.log the number 3. If we look in the console, yep, it console.log the number 3 because the function returns 3. Let's try creating another one. This function is going to be called times 5. Again, we'll pass in a number, and it's just going to return something. It's going to return the num times 5. And then just like before, we can test it using a console.log times 5, and we'll pass in the number 5 here. And if I run this, we'll see that it returns number 25. Functions can have return statements, but they don't have to. In this case, this function adds 3 to the sum variable, which is a global variable because it's defined before the function. It does not return anything. So if you don't specify a return value, the return value is just undefined. Now I'm going to create another function that is similar. This one is going to be called add5. And this time we'll just do sum equals sum plus 5. Or we can shorten this to use the plus equals. So now that's going to add 5 to sum also. but it's not going to return anything. So if we log this out, it would be undefined. It's simple to assign a returned value to a variable. See right here we have the function change. And you pass in a number and it's going to return the result of this mathematical expression. So when we call the function change and pass in the 10, the value that is returned from this function is going to be stored in this variable here. We can do the same thing down here. First we initialize the variable processed, and process arg, it's going to return the result of this mathematical expression. So I can set processed to equal what this function returns. So I can say processed arg, and then I'll just pass in the number 7 here. And now processed equals the result of this mathematical expression. In computer science, a queue is an abstract data structure where items are kept in order. New items can be added to the back of the queue, and old items are taken off from the front of the queue. We're going to simulate that right now, some of the functionality of a queue, using this next in line function. So the purpose of this is to show that in this next in line function, you can add an item to the array that's passed in, and then it's going to return the first item on the list. For instance, if we have this array right here, if we add an item to this array, it should come after at the end. So it should come after 5, and then it should return the first item on the list. In this case, it's 1. So you see we have some console.log set up. So it should show what the list looks like, the array looks like beforehand, and then show what it looks like afterwards. This JSON.stringify is just a way to change an array into a string that can easily be printed out to the screen. So to do this, we're just going to have to do 2 things that we've learned about already. So the first thing is to add the item onto the list. So we see right here, next in line, passed in the test array and 6. So we're calling this function next in line. We're passing in this test array here and the number 6. We want the number 6 to be added to the end of the array. So we'll just do r.push, and then I'll put in num, just like that. Well, actually it's item. So what we did, we took this array that was passed in here, which is in this case test array, and we pushed the item that was passed in. And in this case here, it's the item 6. Now we want to return the first item on the list. We want to remove and return this item, so that when we console.log here, it should show the number 1. So instead of returning item, I'm going to return r.shift. That's what shift does. Shift removes the first item and returns that first item. So let's check this out. Okay, you can see before 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we've popped off the 1, and after it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We did it. Booleans are another data type in JavaScript. There are only 2 values, true or false. They're basically little on-off switches where true is on and false is off. They don't use quotation marks around the Boolean. See, it just says return false. So this is a function here, it should be indented, where it's just going to return false when you call this function. It could also be true, so we could return true. You can use true and false in more places than just function returns, and we'll be talking more about that later. An if statement is used to make decisions in code. The keyword if tells JavaScript to execute the code in the curly braces under certain conditions defined in the parentheses. So here is a full if statement right here, and there's always parentheses after the keyword if, and here's the condition. So if the stuff inside these parentheses evaluates to true, then the code within these curly braces will be evaluated or run. So in this case, it's a variable. So if the is it true variable is true, it will return yes, it's true. Now if this is not true, then we'll get to the second return statement, no, it's false. So this whole function here takes in a variable, and we check if that's true or not. So I'm going to make another example just like this. We have another function that hasn't been filled out yet, true or false, and there's a variable that's passed in, was that true? So we'll say if, and then the parentheses, was that true? If that's true, we're going to return something. It will be a string just like before, and the string is, yes, that was true. If it's not true, then we'll get to the second return statement in the function, and we'll return a different string. We'll return, no, that was false. False. Let me just add some semicolons, and then I can run this, and we'll see what happens. Oh, return needs to be spelled correctly, so let me spell return correctly. So before I run this, I'm going to add a console.log here, so we can console.log the answer. So this is the function call here, true or false. We're passing in true, and then we're going to log what is returned here. Yes, that was true. Since we passed in true, this if statement evaluates to true, and this code is run right here. There are many comparison operators in JavaScript that will return a Boolean of true or false. The most common is the equality operator, and it's often used in an if statement. So here it just says if val. So we have this whole if statement right here. If val, we're going to see if val equals 12. Now to check if it equals 12, we're going to have to use the double equal sign. That is the equality operator, and we'll say if val equals 12. The reason why we can't just use a single equal sign is that a single equal sign is the assignment operator. If we just had a single equal sign, that would mean that we were setting the value of the val variable to equal 12. We're not trying to set this to equal 12. We're trying to check if the value of this variable equals 12, so we have to use the double equal sign. So now this test equal function is going to test to see if the number we pass in is equal to 12. I can do a console.log here, console.log, and then we can see what appears in the console here, not equal, because 10 does not equal 12. We learned about the equality operator, which is the double equal sign. There's also the strict equality operator, the triple equal sign. So here we're checking if 3 equals 3 with the strict equality operator. So the difference is that the equality operator, the double equal sign, attempts to convert both values being compared to a common type, while the strict equality operator does not do the type conversion. So this is going to evaluate to true, the 3 equals 3. But the 3 equals 3 with the string on this side is going to evaluate to false. Both of these would be true if we were using the double equal sign, because the string would be converted to a number and they would be equal to true. But with the triple equal sign, it does not get converted to a number, so it would be evaluated to false, the second one, with the 3 equal signs. So here, we're just going to use it right in this if statement and do equals 7. So now we can pass in the number 7, and it's going to evaluate to true, but if we pass in a string 7, it will evaluate to false. we will do one more review with the equality operator and the strict equality operator. So if I run this here, we'll see in the console says equal, because it's checking if the number 10 and the string 10 are equal. So if A equals B, the number 10 equals a strict number 10, return equal. Since we're using the equality operator with two equal signs, it performs a type conversion, and it converts the string into a number. But if we use the strict equality operator with three equal signs, I'll run that again, and you'll see not equal in the console, because now it's not converting the types, and it's just checking if a number is equal to a string, which is not, so we get not equal. Now I will show you the inequality operator, which is basically the opposite of the equality operator. So I'm going to do the inequality operator with an exclamation point and an equal sign. In this case, I'm going to see if the value is not equal to 99. And again, just like the equality operator, this does type conversion. So let's just run this program, and we'll see it is not equal, because 10, we passed in 10 into the function here, and 10 is not equal to 99, so we get not equal. The strict inequality operator is basically the opposite of the strict equality operator. And it works like this. So it says if val, I'm going to do if val does not equal 17. So this is the strict inequality operator. Instead of one equal sign, we have two equal signs. And that means it's going to check if this is not true, but it's not going to convert types. So for instance, if we were checking if the number 3 does not equal the string 3, that would be true. So in this example, we're just checking if 10 does not equal 17. If we run this, we will see it's not equal. We can also use the greater than operator. So in this function, we're checking if a value is over 100. So I'm going to put greater than 100. And then here, we're checking if a value is over 10. So I'll put greater than 10. So here we call the function, we pass in 10. And if I run that function, you'll see 10 or under, because we're not over 100, we're not over 10, or 10 or under, because we passed in 10. We can also use the greater than or equal to operator. So we'll finish this function by using greater than or equal to. That's just a greater than sign and an equal sign. And we'll put 20 down here. Just greater than or equal to 10. If I run that, we should see 10 or over, because we're passing in 10 and it's greater than or equal to 10. Now I'll show you an example of the less than operator with this function. We're going to check if the value is less than 25. And then here we're checking if a value is less than 55. So here's a trick I use to remember which symbol is less than and which symbol is more than. If you see the less than symbol, it looks kind of like the letter L, which is the first letter in less than. And then the more than symbol is just the opposite. And we also have the less than or equal to operator we can use in JavaScript. So here we're going to check if it's less than or equal to 12. So we just put the less than operator, 12. Oh, equal, less than or equal. That's an important part. Here it's the less than or equal to 24 to make this statement true. And if we run, we see smaller than or equal to 12. Number 10 we passed in. Sometimes you want to check if two things are true at the same time. For instance, you may want to check if this value is less than or equal to 50, and you also want to check if the value is more than or equal to 25. So here we have a nested if statement. So it's going to check if it's less than or equal to 50, and if it's more than or equal to 25, then it's going to return yes. But there's an easier way to do this. So what I'm going to do is copy this where it says value is more than or equal to 25. I'm going to delete this nested if statement. So we don't need that if statement. And I'm going to use the AND operator. So we have less than or equal to 50, and if I put two ampersands like this, that means AND. Now I'm going to put value is more than or equal to 25. So this says if value is less than or equal to 50, and the value is also more than or equal to 25, then we're going to return yes. So both this statement and this statement have to be true to get inside this if statement here. In this code here, we're checking if the value is not between 10 and 20. So if the value is less than 10, we return outside, and if the value is more than 20, we return outside. There is an easier way to do this with the logical OR operator. So I'm just going to delete this whole if statement here, and then I can add an OR statement, which is just two pipes. So I'm going to put val is less than or more than 20 here. So now we're checking if the value is less than 10 or if the value is more than 20. Either way, we're going to return outside. And if that's not true, we'll return inside. When an if statement is true, normally the block of code right after the if statement will be evaluated. And if it's not true, nothing happens. But with an else statement, an alternate block of code can be executed when it's not true. So this is a perfect use case. If value is more than 5, the result is bigger than 5. If the value is less than or equal to 5, the result is 5 or smaller. We can do this with an else statement. So I'm just going to type in else here, and then we can just delete this whole if statement, just like that. And now we have if the value is less than 5, the result will be bigger than 5. Else, if it's not more than 5, we'll return 5 or smaller. If you have multiple conditions that need to be addressed, you can use else if statements. It's a way of chaining if statements together. In this example, we have 3 conditions. If value is more than 10, we're going to return greater than 10. If it's less than 5, return smaller than 5, or else we're going to return 5 and up. So this is a perfect use case for an else if statement. So this is how we do it. We'll do else, and then we're going to add the if statement at the end of the else. I'm just going to delete all this stuff. So else if value is less than 5, and then we're going to have one final else statement. Else, and I'm going to put this statement here, this final return. Just going to cut that and then paste it right in there. So now, instead of using multiple if statements, we have the if, and then we have the else if, and then we have the else. When you're using else if statements, order is very important. Let's look at this example here. In this function, first we check if the value is less than 10 and return less than 10. Then, else if, we check if the value is less than 5 and return less than 5. Well, if we look at this example and we pass in the number 7, if I run this, you'll see it's going to say less than 10, which is what we want. However, if we put 3, it's still just going to say less than 10. Really, we want this to say less than 5, because it is actually less than 5. However, this is in the wrong order. So, what we need to do is change the order. So this should be 5, this should be 5, and this should be 10. And this should be 10. So once the first condition is met, it doesn't even check for the rest of the conditions. So that's why it's important to think about the order. So if we run this now, yep, less than 5. That's what we want. you can also chain if and else if statements. So I'm going to complete the following challenge here. Write chained if slash else if statements to fulfill the following conditions. So we have these conditions where if the number is less than 5, we're going to return tiny. If it's less than 10, return small, and so on. So what I'm going to do is actually just copy this right here, because this is written, part of it's written exactly how we want it to be written. I'll just paste it here, and I'm going to just add the if and else statements. So it's going to be if, and then we put this in parentheses because the condition is always in parentheses. If number is less than 5, then we're going to use the curly braces, and we're going to return tiny. So I'll just move that up here. I'll cut it and paste it. Now we're going to use an else if statement. And I got the curly braces. First of all, also I need to put the condition in these parentheses. I'm just going to cut this. Number is less than 10, put it right here, and we're going to return this small. So I'll put that in the curly braces here. And then we have another else if statement. Else if, and the condition, just like before, number is less than 15. Put that in there. We always need the curly braces to show what's going to happen in the if statement. So I'm just cutting and pasting this text again. We have an else if, and then we have this here. Then we have return large. Actually the final thing is just going to be else. We don't even need an else if at the statement at the end. We don't even need to put the condition, because if it's more than or equal to 20, that's going to be everything else. So I'm just going to cut this. We don't need any of this stuff here. And we're just going to return large. So with this one test here, for test 7, we can actually console.log that. Console.log. And see what it returns for 7. We can try a few different things. Oh, we have an error here. Oh, forgot to put this parentheses wrong way. Let's try that again. Small, but if this is 20, it should be huge. And if it's 19, which would be less than 20, we should see large. Yep, that worked. In the game of golf, each hole has a par, which means the average number of strokes you're supposed to use to get the ball into the hole. So depending on how far above or below par your strokes are, there's a different nickname. So here are some of the nicknames: hole in one, eagle, birdie, par, and we're going to write a function where you pass in the par and you also pass in the strokes. You can see up here par and strokes, and it's going to return the nickname. So that's what we're going to write. You can see this table here shows what we have to do. If the strokes are 1, then you get a hole in one. If the stroke is less than or equal to par minus 2, you get an eagle, and so on. And we also have this array that's going to make it easier, because we can just use things from this array instead of typing out the words. So we're going to start with an if statement. If, and then we have to put the condition. If strokes equals, that's the equality operator. We don't want to use a single equal sign because that would be the assignment operator. If it equals 1, then we can return, and we can see down here we're going to return hole in one. But we can just use it from this names array. So it's going to be names, and this is going to be index 0 of the array. So we'll do names and then 0. And then we can do an else if, and then we can put the condition, strokes. I have to spell strokes right. Strokes, and then we can just actually copy this right from here, less than or equal to par minus 2, and then we are going to return name, and this will be the index 1. which is an eagle. At this point, I can do some copying and pasting. I'm going to copy this whole thing because a lot of this, rest of this will be else if. So else if strokes is, this time it's going to be equal to par minus 1, and we're going to return, it's going to be birdie, which is array index 2. And I'm going to continue just like this. So this time it's if strokes equal par, we're going to return name index 3. See, 0, 1, 2, 3 is going to be the word par up here. They'll just keep just like this. Now it's going to be par plus 1, and we'll change this to 4. Now it's going to be par plus 2, and we'll change this to 5, which is going to be the double bogey. And finally, if strokes is, change this to more than or equal to par plus 3, that means you did very poorly, so you should just go home. So it's going to be name index 6, and we don't need this anymore. So now we're going to do some tests here. I'm going to do a console.log, and we're going to pass in the function that we're calling. So in this case, the par is 5 and the strokes are 4. So that should return birdie. Let's see what happens. Null. Okay, that's not what I expected. It's because this should be names. I spelled this wrong. Okay, that's why sometimes it's better to check before you go through the whole thing. You can test things as you go. But let's do that again. Yep, birdie. And if I type in 2 here, eagle. If I type in 8, it's probably going to tell us to go home. Go home. Yep, we just completed this challenge. Instead of using chained else-if statements, you can use a switch statement. A switch statement tests a value and can have many case statements which define various possible values. So let me show you how that works. Here we're going to write a switch statement which tests val and sets the answer to the following conditions. If we pass in 1, the answer should be alpha. If we pass in 2, the answer should be beta, and so on. So let me show you how that works. We'll just type in the word switch, that's a keyword here, and we're testing the val that's passed into this function. So it starts off kind of like an if statement, and right now, so we're going to compare the val to the different cases that we have. So we'll have case, and the first number is going to be 1. So here we're saying if the case of val is 1, if val equals 1, and it's using the strict equality operator, so it's like the equals equals equals, it's going to make sure that the type of the variable are the same, so a string 1 and a number 1 will not be equal. But if the case is 1, then we're going to set answer to equal alpha. We'll just use do it like this, alpha, and then we are going to break. Break means that we're at the end of that case statement, and once you break it, it just goes to the end of the switch statement. It doesn't evaluate anything else in the switch statement. So we're also going to have case 2, and one thing I forgot that we're just going to indent that so it's easier to see the different cases. And case 2, the answer is going to set equal to beta. And then we always need the break statement. If you don't have a break statement, it will just run through to the next case statement automatically. So if the case was 1 and you did not have a break here, first it would set the answer to alpha, and then it would set the answer to beta. It would just skip over right to the next case statement. But since the break is here, it's going to go out of the switch statement completely. So it will go start running the code after this last curly bracket. So now we're going to do case 3. We'll just do some copying and pasting here. And we're going to have 4 cases, so I'll just do the rest of the pasting here. So we'll have 3 and 4, alpha, beta, and then we have gamma and delta. And we know that the switch statement is over because we have this final curly bracket, and then we're just going to return answer. So let's do some tests. To really test this, we're going to have to add a console.log here to log what it's going to be. And I'll run this. Oh, alpha, good. Now 2 should be beta. 3 should be gamma, good. And we'll just assume 4 is correct, so we're done. Now I'll talk to you about the default option in a switch statement. The default option is kind of like else in an if-else statement. So here's a switch statement that's very similar to the one we already saw, and it's inside this function where we pass in a value into the function, and we're going to check if the value equals A. If it equals A, the answer is going to be set to apple. B, answer is set to bird. C, cat. So in this example, we can see that we passed in here, we passed in the A, and it returned apple because that was one of the options. But what if we pass in something else? If I pass in the number 2 here, it's going to return an empty string. That's because the answer is set to an empty string, and we never override the answer here, so it just returns that empty string. What if we want to return something anytime A, B, or C is not passed through? So for anything else that's passed into the function, we're going to do default. This is like the else statement. So the default, we're going to do answer equals stuff. And again, we're going to have the break. So now, whenever we pass in something that's not A, B, or C, it's going to return stuff. So I can pass in 5, it's going to return stuff. But if I go back to passing in C, one of the things we have a case for, it will return cat. And that's the switch statement. Sometimes you want a switch statement where multiple inputs give the same